Will Joe Biden be saddled with the Republican Senate led by Mitch McConnell, or will he have a Democratic majority in place to help him get his agenda through? Well, we will learn the answer to that question in just 25 days as Georgians head to the polls for a pair of Senate runoffs. If the GOP wins just one of them, they'll retain the majority. Now, given how tight the polls are and how close the races were on November 3rd, the key to winning in Georgia is going to come down to turnout. If Democrats can get their base to the polls, they're going to win the runoffs. Now, that base includes a lot of women and a lot of voters of color. A new poll, however, of 500 black female voters in Georgia shows the Democrats have a challenge ahead of them. In that poll, less than half of those women correctly identified January 5th as the date of the runoff, the number even lower in the rural part of Georgia. And that poll was commissioned by the group Higher Heights for America. They're a political action committee focused on electing progressive black women at the federal, state, and city levels. And for more, we are joined by Glynda Carr. She's the president and CEO of Higher Heights. Glynda, thanks for the time.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I thought by now you guys get bombarded as soon as you turn on the TV set with, campaign ads start to finish. Why do you attribute so many folks still being confused about the date of this runoff?
And so I think it's attributed to a couple of things. It's the holidays. People are exhausted around COVID-19. In the same poll, you've also seen that the people are very excited and they recognize the importance of this election and how it is tied to their day-to-day lives. And so the work is to ensure that we're giving Black women the information they need and the tools. And I certainly think it's because you've seen in the poll that the majority of the women polled in the survey are looking to vote early and by mail. And so I do think as we look at the new way of organizing during COVID-19, January 5th, the end of voting, may not be the date that people know. They know the dates they need to get their absentee ballots in the early vote.
I think it's no stretch to say that Joe Biden wouldn't be president without the support of African-American women. Certainly in the primary, you look at what happened in South Carolina, which turned it around for him right there. But I also take note, James Clyburn said that some of the messaging that was happening really hurt Democrats. Maybe not Biden, but nationally it certainly turned off, and they lost some House seats consequently because of it. One of those being defund the police. I want you to listen to what Joe Biden said yesterday, talking about Georgia in terms of the date of January 5th, but also messaging.
That's how they beat the living hell out of us across the country, saying that we're talking about defunding the police. We're not. We're talking about holding them accountable.
To that end, do you agree? Will that message play, particularly with people that your organization's reaching out to get invested in this? Is there a way that accountability is the right word, or defund the police is an important phrase, particularly for communities of color?
I mean, defund the police is a phrase that galvanizes a population, particularly young voters of color and Black voters in particular. It is also a phrase that is, outside of context. Defunding police is actually talking about the redistribution of funding to services that help to create safe communities. And so to me, this has sparked a dialogue to be able to talk about what does reforming criminal justice, which in our poll just out talks about women, criminal justice and the George Floyd Policing Act is a top tiered issue for Black women. That how do you tie this very conversation into how do you turn this into policies? And Black women are very clear in this research that they are looking to send leaders to Washington that center the issues that we care about. And those top three issues are COVID-19, the economy, and racism.
How important do you think it is that Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris as his running mate? We just saw other high-profile members of his cabinet, also African-American. Do you think that filters down to maybe not you and I, but folks who follow the campaign more casually? Is that resonating?
The selection of Kamala Harris was game changing. Obviously, our work at Higher Heights is expanding the number of Black women in elected office. Black women, frankly, put more into our democracy. We are the margin to wins, both on the local level and on the national level. And so we certainly want to see a reflective democracy. And in 2020, during a global pandemic and a racial awakening of this country, having the ability to organize voters. And it was a coalition of voters that centered Black women voters who led the way to elect the first woman of color, the first woman of immigrant parents, is an opportunity for her to bring her unique experiences as a Black woman in America into the Oval Office as we talk about how do we move this country forward.
Interesting conversation. Glynda, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And staying in Georgia, this was another day of campaigning for the two Democrats in next month's runoffs, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. RFL's D.C. field producer Annie Anderson, she was in Atlanta to hear from the candidates and their supporters.
Northern Georgia Union members and supporters gathered in a parking lot in downtown Atlanta Friday morning to hear from candidates Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, the two Democrats facing off in a runoff race against sitting Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue.
And the reason the whole country is watching Georgia right now is because these two Senate races will determine control of the United States Senate.
We've got to take the democracy back for the people. Have you noticed of late that apparently there's some folk who think they own your democracy?
It's a moment flight attendant Candace Goldberg didn't think she'd ever see.
I've lived here for 15 years and I never dreamed that we would get to this, that we would vote for the Democratic nominee for president. Is crazy.
And she says helping Georgia flip during the presidential election has her emotional.
When I cast my vote for Hillary Clinton in the primary, I cried. When I cast my vote for her in the presidential election in 2016, I cried. And then even just last time, when I cast my vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I cried.
Her colleague Christine Simonin with a similar thought.
I'm pretty excited, actually. It feels really good to know that your vote really counts right now.
In his remarks, Ossoff told the crowd of supporters what he thinks of the current senators.
And we're running against like the Bonnie and Clyde of corruption in politics.
But he and Warnock also spoke on the issues.
It's wrong to call people essential workers and not pay them an essential wage and not provide for them essential benefits. And we got to invest in the infrastructure of our country.
Because we're building a movement for health, jobs, and justice for the people so that we can get things done, so that we can pass a $15 minimum wage in the United States of America, so we can ensure every single family has great health care.
Like much of the country, Georgia has been hard hit by the pandemic, and many people say they're eagerly awaiting another COVID stimulus package. But here in Atlanta, home to the largest airport in the country, people I talk to say there's something specific they want to make sure is included in that package.
We really need to pass a COVID stimulus package that includes a payroll support program.
A payroll support program, which is a workers first program. Right now, we have like tens of thousands of flight attendants who are out on furlough that have no income, that are out on unemployment because this program hasn't been extended. So we need relief from Congress in order to get the PSP.
Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle proposed a bill that would extend that program through the end of March. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said Republicans would not support that bill. And that has Simonin even more excited that Democrats might flip the Senate.
This is the first time that I've been really excited about voting.
Annie, thank you. And this reminder, RFL will be on the ground in Georgia with reports each weeknight right here on RFL through the runoffs come January 5th. When we come back, much more on COVID, including the mental health challenges it's creating for our kids. We'll be talking to a psychologist. Plus, well, he just couldn't help himself. The Pfizer vaccine, the least political thing we've heard about COVID since the virus first hit. Well, it gets politicized all because of you-know-who, Donald Trump. That's next when RFL returns.